Welcome to the CxO podcast, where we get real with C-levels, entrepreneurs, marketers, and more. I'm Yen, and joining us today we have the COO and CIO of Juwai IQI, Nabeel.
Hello there, hi.
How are you?
I'm good, Yen, how are you?
I'm good. Have you got your lunch already?
I haven't, no. My lunch is going to be very limited. I'm on a current diet.
Okay, let's talk about the diet later.
Okay.
So, Nabeel is actually I was call him the IT guy in our company. So I just want to know a bit like how to get into computer science and like, what is that your passion or?
It was, yes. So I got into technology in general when I was quite young. So when I was probably, I would say 10 years old, maybe 12 years old, I got my first computer. And you guys won't remember this, but it was something with a processor called an 8086 processor. And it used to run at a speed of 7 megahertz. Right, so now we're at, 3.2, gigahertz. So that's the sort of speed difference. And that was my first sort of introduction to a computer. So I very quickly had a passion for it. And I then started learning programming. I was probably about 13 by that time. And I learned my first programming language, which was Pascal at the time. And then really it just grew on from there. And there was this whole passion that I had around technology in general. I'm a very hands-on person, and it was very easy for me to get into. So that was the sort of startings of that. And then from there, I moved on and I did my A-levels in the UK. So this is all in London. And I did computer science. And then, during that time, one of the concepts that was taught to us in choosing a degree was about following your passion. And I also have a passion around biology and chemistry. So my first sort of year of a degree was actually in cell and molecular biology. But my secondary passion at the time was computer science, and also really just a view to see what the future is, was about, do I want to sit in a lab with researching biology and chemistry and all these wonderful things, molecular biology, huge passion of mine, or would I want to actually think about my career side of things? And that's what I decided to do then, is so then I changed later on then to computer science. So that was the whole sort of beginnings and the start of my foray into
Actually,
technology.
you found your passion quite early as compared to mine, because I only realized my sort of like passion or direction when I'm in my 20s.
Ah, okay.
So back when you are in your 30s and started get into technology, do you see like there's a big difference as compared to when you first started and as compared to now?
Big difference in terms of
like the things that you study and versus the things that you actually work on and things like that. Yeah.
So obviously technology has moved on immensely. The world has moved on immensely. When I was starting out with tech, we had computers that are not even considered calculators now. If you compare the sort of power difference that we've got now versus what we have before. And of course now with, in the last sort of 6 months or so with the public release of AI systems, it's obviously a whole different world of difference. So definitely a huge difference in that. But I think, what I learned from the beginnings, from my, early career, particularly from there when I, finished my degree and then started working, was about how to be close to a computer, to technology. So I understand the ones and the zeros. I understand what happens, behind the scene when now, for example, a computer person joining or doing technology or programming now, they may obviously understand what happens outside, and they're very result focused, which I think is really important. But perhaps the older generation who worked with very low level computers will understand what's happening under the hood. And perhaps to give you an analogy, it would be that if you compare someone who uses AI systems now versus someone who actually programs them and builds the actual models, that's the sort of difference, right? Both are obviously important and both are effective, but they're different sort of classes in terms of knowledge and experience and then abilities.
So kind of to put it into simple terms is because I'm also not very IT good, good in IT. So putting it in simple terms is like back then the generation will probably know the 0 and 1s and the theories and the back end. But now is anyone can be a technology person, because you can actually utilize AI to do the stuff that you want them to do. Because like even in ChatGPT, you can start coding just like that without any knowledge. Is that what you mean?
Kind of, yes. So now I think it's actually a step further. So anyone can be a tech person, and I think not anyone can be. Everyone has to be a technology person, no matter what field you're in. And it's something that I speak to my students and to my children about, is about how it's not good enough now to not know technology. You cannot be a marketing person, you cannot be an operations person, you cannot run a shipyard without knowing something about technology. So if anybody thinks that they can get through life without doing that at the moment, I think they're probably going to be left behind sooner or later.
Okay, very good input. Probably I want to talk a bit more on how IQI started. And I know that you guys have the Atlas tool, which is the so-called technology that we provide for our agents.
Yeah.
So when IQI first founded, is that already incorporated? Because like you mentioned, you believe that technology should be incorporated since young, and then it's very important to move forward as a business. So is that already in mind before you guys got IQI, or like how do you go about?
Maybe to understand that a little bit more sort of background about me. So my sort of career in technology and computer science started off with a small company called Trayport. And there were just 3 of us there at the time, the founder and then 2 of us who sort of joined. And we were very much the core team. And what we did in Trayport was that we built an online an online trading system. So if you imagine you've got, in Europe, for example, there's gas and there's oil, and you've got traders and you've got brokers, and companies want to buy oil in the hundreds of barrels or thousands of barrels. That's the system that we designed. And again, we go back to the time when this was in sort of 2000, 2001 kind of time, right? I don't know if you were around then.
I'm around.
Okay.
Around 5 years old, around. Yeah.
So, we had to be very conscious of the amount of bandwidth that we're using. That there wasn't a fiber internet. We barely had something called ADSL at the time as well. So it was very much, you remember those old modems, the ones that make the noises?
Beep, beep.
Yeah, those ones. So it was that. So what we were designing was an instantaneous trading system, which, within milliseconds, information is passed along, but using, the very small amount of bandwidth that we had. So, anyway, so that company was really successful. We built it up, and then later we sold it for a good sum of money, and that was my first sort of foray, I could probably say, into sort of the startup side of things. And then from there I worked in the UK in a lot of banks and hedge funds and financial institutions. So Lloyd's of London was one of my favorite. Barclays and Credit Suisse were equally fun as well. So what we learn in the finance side of things, and what I learned in Trayport, is really, without technology, the world, your business isn't really going to go forward. And it was a mindset that I developed from the beginning, is within everything that we do, there is a place to make things better. And that's obviously with technology. And I've always had this concept of technology needs to complement whatever it is that you're doing. It can't replace it. So quite often people make the mistake where they will think, okay, we're going to get a computer system, we're going to build this, and then it's going to all work just magically. But it's not the way it happens in my experiences. You build a computer system, but you need the people to run it. Okay, so that's something that I've always had in mind. So when we first started IQI, then at that moment we had an office in KLCC, just overlooking the Twin Towers. Lovely office that it was, and we had our first project that we brought on. And the first thing I did was actually bring technology to the scene. And remember, this is 12 years ago, so 2011 kind of time. So I built a system based on Google Earth, which would give a sort of 3D perspective of the building, with the high elevation. And the buyers that we had during some of the sales events were astonished. They could go to their unit, they could swim around it, they could sort of fly around the property, and they could see what the view would look like. And this is, again, as I said, 2011. So, very early on, it was about bringing technology to consumers, making it useful for them and making it work for them. The flip side is also on the back end side of the business. So, a lot of companies start off and they will do the manual processes, but they won't think about data. They won't think about automation at that very beginning. And that's exactly what we did, is we actually thought about data. We thought about automation, and we put it in right from the beginning. So, whereas a company might, for example, think, okay, I've got all these, files of data, I want to now digitize it, and they've got a really mammoth task to make that happen. We actually did that right from the very beginning. So all of our buyer data, transaction data, all of this is all digitized all the way from 2011. So now if I want to do any analytics on it, I can do that. I can tell you what were the prices of properties back in 2011 here in Malaysia. And we can dig into all of that side of things.
I actually really echo that, because previously I actually spoke about technology in businesses. Then I spoke about how technology actually is being incorporated in business. It helps the business to move smoother, as compared that, like you said, one of the mistakes that businesses will make is they think technology can overtake every single thing, and they didn't thought of that from the beginning of the business. So I think one of the, what I'm really impressed is I actually thought about that before they started. So in order for them to move forward and faster, they are able to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And what that actually led us to do, and I think it's a really good practical example of where that led, is that once we launched our agent platform, like actual, a platform, or what we call our agent enablement platform, which we named Atlas, is we didn't have to build a lot of data to drive that, because we already had all the transaction data, we had all the agent data, all the developer information, and we could slot in the marketing tools, we can slot in the administrative tools, the reporting tools, etc., because we had that groundwork to make that happen. And I think it's a very good practical example of how putting tech first, with your startup, with your businesses, that's really where you need to think of technology, and really, that will then help you in the long term.
But as a first, let's say I just want to start our business, how should I actually think of it? Because you mentioned, when you first started 2011, right, you have this technology to have an overview of the building and things like that. But how do you learn about that? Is it coming up from scratch, or do you learn from somewhere else, from companies, or how do you start?
It's how you start. So I suppose there are two questions there. Is how did we do that part first in IQI? And then secondly is what's the generalization from that. So we did it, I was the main tech person there. I was the only tech person there. But obviously having this passion for technology, learning something new wasn't terribly difficult. I have a background as a software engineer, and I can understand code, but I also had a passion for other things related to computers. So in my old work, I wasn't just the IT guy. I also got involved in marketing, I got involved in legal, I got involved in business, I did sales presentations, I did presentations in front of ministers in the UK, all sorts of things. So it was really useful to have that extra information. So when it came to applying the tech to the business, I was able to do that. So it probably took me, I think, maybe a week to learn some of the graphic side of things. I got some models that we had of drawings of the property. I made my own concepts from there, and then created a sort of VR model on top of Google Earth at the time. What's the generalization that we can take from there is, as we said in the beginning, it's not about the technology, unless the company is all about the technology, right? Different thing. But most businesses exist because they're giving something to consumers. As one of my sort of marketing people that I'm sure we all follow, Gary Vaynerchuk, right? He said something along the lines of, if you have an idea and you can put it into a bucket and you can sell it, that's what you want to be doing, right? And technology will help you to make that happen. Obviously, Gary used a lot more colorful words, as he does, but the principle is exactly that. So my advice to people who are setting up businesses, to setting up to having startups, is don't go intentionally, think technology first. You've got to think of your business first. Your business has to be successful. You have to be able to sell whatever it is that you're selling, and the technology part will enable that to happen.
Is there any reason why you choose real estate? Because you mentioned that you were in finance, right? And then, like, is there any particular reason that you got into real estate?
It's an interesting story. So I suppose, you know, initially in terms of my my expertise, it was around fintech.
Yes.
So around the technology around finance and those sorts of areas. Real estate is obviously related to that, and there were a lot of work that I did that involved assets and these sorts of things. To be honest, it was a little bit of an accident. So when I moved to Malaysia for the warm climate and the food and the people, I actually met my neighbor was somebody that I knew from the UK quite by accident, and we had an idea, and he sort of floated this idea of establishing a real estate company, and then we decided to kick it off together, obviously with our other partners, Kashif and Daniel, and everybody else was there as well. And we set it up, and I still remember, you know, meeting number 0 where we decided on the name and everything else. You know, pretty good experience it was.
I actually like to know about these kind of stories, because I like how businesses, they have their back end story, like how they get started, where they don't tell people what about it. But yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's something that, you know, there's so many stories about the name, for example. So the name that was initially floated around at the time was Multi-Link Homes, and I've got a marketing hat on me as well as a technology hat. I like to think I can put myself in the shoes of a consumer. And, you know, by the way, as a tech person, we were discussing just earlier outside of this was about, you know, how do you explain technology concepts to people? And it's exactly this, is you have to be able to put yourself in the shoes of your
audience,
as we call it, or the audience, right? Whoever's going to be consuming your product. So I was able to do that, and then I was thinking about, okay, email addresses. I'm going to receive an email from, you know, Nabeel at multilinkhomes.com. I'm not going to type that. I'm going to make a mistake and all these things. So anyway, we had a lot of back and forth about the name, about the graphics and everything else. Wonderful time. I would love to do it again.
So I really agree on how you say, like, you even thought about the use of words like IQI. That is so easy that people don't make mistakes in their email addresses. And also for IQI, I know that you guys use Atlas, right, as a technology. So what is Atlas?
So Atlas is our agent enablement platform. Okay, and in a nutshell, it's a part of our entire platform. So what IQI does, what Juwai IQI does, is that we consider ourselves an end-to-end real estate property technology company, right? So what does that mean? So it means that from the start of a real estate journey, where do people start from? Usually from a portal, right? They'll go and search a property portal. If you've got a consumer that's still looking through a newspaper, we don't want to talk to them particularly. So the journey starts from, you know, a real estate portal, and then from there it sort of continues, but there's a massive disconnect on that part. So after an inquiry comes through, there's no visibility that property portals will have with the real estate companies. So as Juwai IQI, what we are is we sort of encapsulate both sides of that equation. So we have what we call the discovery channel, the portal, and then we have the real estate segment, which is where the transaction gets closed. But there's a third segment, there's a third part to that as well, which is what happens with the processing afterwards. And you know, the transaction documents need to be signed, signatures need to be validated, identity needs to happen, etc. So what Atlas does is it supports this entire platform. So we've got the discovery channel. Atlas actually allows agents to do marketing as well. So with this discovery channel part, agents can create Facebook adverts, they can list their properties, they can create videos, they can create images which they can then post onto social media, etc. So that's the discovery part that happens. From there, the leads that come in, Atlas also collects them so that agents' leads are all in one place within Atlas. It's like a CRM, for example, and with those leads they can then act upon them. So they can, you know, call them through the platform, they can get in touch, they can do additional marketing, they can then get documentation about projects or properties that they want to sell to their prospective consumer. So all of this happens within the Atlas ecosystem. And we've gone a step further also now for well what we call the secondary markets or the resale side of the market, where agents can close all of their transactions digitally as well, so they don't need to go into their office, for example. And this obviously helped us a lot during COVID. I remember when the lockdowns happened in sort of early 2020, there was all this panic that companies had. Oh my God, we don't have communication solutions, we don't have video solutions. But actually, because of Atlas, we had everything in place. So we had video conferencing in place. We'd already started using Zoom, for example, and Google Meet as well. We had our own platform that we were actually building at the time, which we used internally for a short time. We already had VR 360 models for our properties, and that's only grown much stronger now. So obviously, with sort of 2-3 years worth of experience on that, we are probably, and I boastfully say this, probably one of the foremost prop tech digitally enabled companies in Southeast Asia, and probably, when we think about it, around the world. So maybe some other companies that might be similar would be Compass and perhaps KE Holdings from China.
So to break it down, actually that's a very long message here. To break it down, and correct me if I'm wrong, so that Atlas is actually an ecosystem where you have the first part where it reach out to the consumer. So consumer is the one to find out the portals, the property. And the other side is actually to benefit the agents.
Yes.
But for agents, it's more like your daily transaction, it's all digitalized, and they can find all the information in the Atlas itself, correct? And also, I believe they have marketing tools like graphic studio. Like you can create some sort of like Canva, you can design, and templates are already there, and you can even create your own videos and things like that. And recently I heard you guys incorporated Atlas GPT.
Yes, that's right.
So what is it about?
Alrighty, so quite excited about this piece. So with Atlas GPT, it actually stands for something, generate property text. So what we do is we use obviously ChatGPT to generate descriptions for properties. And just to cast your mind back, if you see, for example, some of the listings in Malaysia or perhaps around the world, they're not really well crafted in terms of the text, right? They're not designed around conversion, for example, or getting clicks from their potential buyers or the viewers. So we definitely wanted to make a better way of doing that. And we've used the power of ChatGPT to make that happen. But usually ChatGPT doesn't know enough about the property. So using Atlas, so within Atlas we have a feature called the Listing Center. And what agents do is that they create their listings within the Listing Center, and then they add the location, for example. So Atlas behind the scenes will then go off and get information about the location. It'll go off and find out the schools, the transportation links,
amenities,
all of these amenities, and then it'll look through our own systems as well. So we've got another feature called Analytics Center, and it'll go off and find out information about that, and then feed that into ChatGPT with very specific prompts to be able to generate a property listing. So in short, what an agent does though simply is they create the listing through the Listing Center, they put in the number of bedrooms, the location, etc., and then they just click on a button and Atlas will generate a description for them. But they can customize it, so they can say, okay, I want this description for Facebook, I want it for WhatsApp, I want it to be using emojis, or conversion focused, or I want it for maybe a long document as well. So all of these options are all within Atlas, and it literally takes like 5 seconds for an agent to do this.
I think he just told me to become an agent though. For real, because I think because I talk to agents quite frequently as well, and I know that they sometimes face this issue of creating the content or even the description, because what they do best is to sell. Yes. So I think what Atlas does is they do everything to benefit the agent. Agent just focus on the one thing that they do, which is to sell. The rest is actually handled by Atlas. Exactly.
I think an agent's sort of job beyond that is to maintain connections. It's about creating that human connection, right? And people often ask me, will AI replace agents? Will technology replace agents? Quite emphatically, I believe the answer is no, because people's lifestyle and investment decisions, or really around real estate. It's one of the biggest decisions that people make, right, when they buy a property. And having that human connection is a massive thing. Again, you know, I've studied a bit of psychology as well, so around, you know, how people's decisions are influenced by their surroundings. So did you know, for example, that people spend more time and effort in researching what car they're going to purchase versus what property they're going to purchase? So somebody might walk into a house and love the smell of the coffee, or you know, whatever aroma or the color choices, and based on that they'll make a decision within, I think, 12 seconds it was, from the research that I read.
Actually, I want to talk about more on that, which is like when you are buying a property. Even for me, when I'm buying stuff, I'm very cautious. So salesperson is very important. So is there any way that you actually empower your agents? Because I know at least you empower 30,000 agents globally. Right. You bring the connection, the networking. So how do you empower them? Absolutely.
So what we do through Atlas is agents have all the tools that they need, as you were saying, to run their property business. They don't need to refer to anything outside of the Atlas platform, so they can list properties, they can do marketing through the marketing center, the marketing hub as we call it now. All of that happens through the platform, and their focus really is on selling, which is what they should be doing. We have other features, for example, called our Global Connect system. So with Atlas, an agent sitting in Malaysia can sell a property in Vietnam, for example, or the other way around. And you know, that sort of global connectivity that Atlas creates is really powerful in allowing these sort of cross-border transactions to happen. And beyond that, really, agents get not just to be an agent. You know, we don't call them agents, we actually call them warriors, because they're not just selling property. What agents or warriors are doing, for example, is they're closing a sale, but then we've got a renovation business, so they get in onto that part. We've got a short-term rental business, they get in on that part. We've got an investment consultancy business, they get onto that part as well. And our platform Atlas connects everybody together.
It's like you are breaking the gap between countries, between boundaries, and with AI and technology, it really makes the world much smaller. So other than Atlas GPT, do you see there's any functions in future that will incorporate AI, or for now that is just the current features? What is the future vision for Atlas?
Okay, so I suppose two questions there. One is the future vision for Atlas. So the real estate industry, for example, around the world is obviously huge. In the US, the commission alone is estimated as going within 2022-23 to have been $100 billion worth of communication. In Malaysia, we currently have about 9% of the entire total transactions that have happened here in Malaysia. In East Malaysia, we're even higher at about 30% of the transactions. So, as you know, with our previous discussion, technology has to support the business. So that's exactly what we're going to do with Atlas. Is we're going to make that global growth happen. So Atlas will power agents in every single country. We're currently in 21 countries. There are 205 or 185 countries that are recognized in the world, depending on who you follow. You know, we intend to enter into every single major country where there is a real estate market. With Atlas, we will connect all of our agents together, we'll connect consumers together to make sure that both sides are getting everything that they need to in order to make themselves, you know, as efficient as possible. You know, we have a motto, we have some of our sort of core values at Juwai IQI. You know, we dream big, and we want that dream for everybody, for our consumers, for our agents, for our warriors, for our staff. And ultimately, you know, the last one of those values that all kind of spirals towards is we enjoy life, and we want all of our consumers to enjoy life, all of our warriors to enjoy life.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of IQI warriors, they are going to places, the travel incentives are great.
Yes,
and I just want to be one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So
because I've seen them having so much fun. And
yeah, so just a couple of years ago, you know, we took our warriors, the top achievers, to Norway. Fantastic time that they had over there. This year we've got a few of them going to, well, not a few, quite a lot going to Dubai, and you know, really kicking up, you know, having a great time there. But again, you know, being a tech person, obviously, you know, for me, it's technology that's enabled them to make all of this happen, to allow them to, you know, connect with their consumers, to allow them to do the things that they do in a fraction of the time that they would have done before.
Great. Is there any future vision for IQI in general?
Beyond the global domination?
Yeah, because I really like how you talk about IQI and Alice. It's actually not just a small vision, but actually it means much more. First of all, it's for the consumer, because when you talk about consumer, you're actually building houses or homes for them. You know, it's not just buy house. You know, it's a home for them, a family. And when you talk about agents, it's actually changing their life, realizing their own dreams, what they want to achieve.
Yes, absolutely. So that's, you know, you took the words out of my mouth, because one of our taglines, and you'll see it across a lot of our marketing that we do, is changing lives, realizing dreams. And that's really what we're about. You know, as founders, as you know, the operations team and the management team, we sacrifice a lot so that we can actually make that dream happen of changing lives. So we've given our agents a lot, and we continue to give them a lot, even at our own expense. We would rather expand the company, we'd rather open opportunities for our agents internationally or locally. We'd rather bring them tools than you know, live a life ourselves.
Great. Grateful to have a boss like this. No, I actually have a question out of my curiosity. It's not in my script. Okay. Is because you
have a script? Oh, okay.
Oops. Because you actually talk to a lot of agents, you actually kind of lead them. Is there a specific leadership style that you have as a boss or as a leader? Sure.
So in terms of my team that work with me, or I work with them, is I always follow the sort of thing where my people are not my people. I see we are as a team. So I don't tend to put myself as the boss above somebody. So particularly in, say, technology, for example, right? I know that I've got people on my team and I value them incredibly, and I want them on my team who perhaps know technology a lot better than I do. You know, maybe specific technology, it may be architecture, and you know, I have no ego, I have no you know, arrogance in that sense to allow them to be part of that. And I consider myself part of the team. So when we're discussing technology, especially with these amazing people that we've got, you know, we will discuss it as a team. I won't ever impose myself saying, no, this is the solution that we have to go down. Because, you know, when you're building things, it's like building a house, right? You want to make sure you're putting the bricks in the right place and the windows in the right place. And perhaps, you know, your own thought might, you know, be a little bit deficient. It may not be as great as having some new ideas that are coming in. So I firmly believe in having a collaborative approach to leadership and working with your team. I do believe also in a lot of training and guidance, and giving your team that free hand to be able to actually explore their ideas and to then put them into place.
So I actually really echo that, because I kind of like report to Nabeel. Like, he also handled the marketing team, and I like how he listened to our advice and actually talk about the solution together. Like, we discuss about it and then we go with one direction. So there's nothing like you're right, you're wrong, but it's more like we did it together. Okay, but that aside, actually I'm a bit curious, like, you have Alexa in your office, right?
Yes.
So do you incorporate technology in your own house?
I do. So all of my, you know, my door entry is controlled by my phone, my air cons, my fans, my water heaters, even calling my children, because they're all in their rooms now. So we've actually got a smart home device. We actually use Google at home. So, you know, whenever we want to communicate, it's terrible, I know. But, you know, it'd be like, hey, Google, broadcast. And then, you know, we'll call the kids down for dinner or whatever. But 100%, I mean, technology at home, you know, smart homes are definitely something that I find fun as well. There's a passion about it, right? It just, maybe there's not any reason to have it. It's just a hobby.
Maybe I should start thinking about it, because I'm just about to renovate my house. So probably like incorporate it into a smart home.
Oh, you have to. You have to, absolutely.
Okay, so my next question is for someone who are really interested in real estate in general. Probably they have not thought about becoming an agent, but they have an interest. Like, how can they become one, or like how can they pursue this direction?
Right. So I think as an agent, first of all, you know, why somebody wants to be an agent is really important.
Yeah.
So there has to be a vision, because being a property agent is really about having your own business. You wake up at the time that you choose to wake up. And these are some of the perks, but they're also potentially some of the downfalls, right? So you got to have this vision in mind. So having some work around personal development, around goal setting, having some training around that is really important before you decide to embark on this real estate career. But the knowing what the potential is, though, is, I think, something that is really important. So we've got agents, for example, who are earning well over $1 million a year in income, 4.5 million ringgits a year upwards. And that's the potential upside. So, once you've got your motivation out the way, you're highly motivated to do it, you then move on to the next step, which is actually selecting how you're going to enter that. Now, it's not too difficult. There are a lot of real estate companies wherever you are in the world, and nonetheless, you'll need to decide on a few things. You'll need some tools, right? So you'll need properties to sell, or you'll need buyers or tenants, for example. So you'll need to select a platform which will give you access to those things. Okay, once you've done that, you also need marketing tools. You need to create videos, you need to create graphics, you need to analyze data, for example. So usually what will happen is you'll need to subscribe to video creation tools. You might need to buy Adobe Premiere or some of these video tools, or Canva, for example, for the graphics. And for data analytics tools, they're generally quite expensive, but you'll need to subscribe to those things. So that will then give you the entire sort of ecosystem that you will need. So that's one option. The second option, and obviously that's why Atlas and IQI, Juwai IQI are here, is that we created that entire ecosystem within our single platform. So as a new agent or someone who's choosing to go into the industry, you could try to find a company that gives you all of that as well. And obviously, I would suggest the second one because it just makes sense. Because and I speak from experience that we can connect our tech a lot better. Projects, for example, new build projects to sell, go through the entire life cycle of our platform Atlas. With regards to marketing and lead collection. That just makes life so much easier. You don't need to be an expert in tech. You need to just be an expert in selling and managing client relationships.
Wow, it sounds to me like agents are very much like entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Because you actually need to build the mindset that you want to achieve more than just the salary, but because eventually you are able to build your own team as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also from there you can actually do much more than just a regular jobs.
Yeah, 100%.
Agent.
Hey, you stick to marketing.
So my next question is actually when we end a podcast, right, we will ask this question like, what is the one advice that you would give to businesses who want to incorporate tech, or it can be just new startup businesses? Like, what is your advice to them?
My advice is think about what the goal of your business is and be a business owner. Okay, do not be an employee for your business. If your business cannot continue without you, if you are the one that makes your business work, then you've essentially become an employee for your business. So don't do that. So, perhaps when you start up, you might need to, of course, do that, which is understandable, but have a plan and a vision in your mind to be able to break free of that. There was something I read a while ago about how the people who are, lazy actually make some of the best business owners, because what they do is they generate the ideas, and because they're lazy to actually implement them, they get other people to implement them. Of course, they're usually good at leading people and leading a team. So be lazy in a good way, and then think about technology and where it can aid your business. Again, your goal is your business, right? So think about how the technology can now transform that, but think about it from the very beginning. From when you start up the idea for your startup, or you're starting a new business unit, think about technology there. And a few key areas is around data and processes. Usually are the two main things that slow businesses down.
Because eventually let's say if you don't start with data analyzing, eventually when you want to move by incorporating technology, you might in a difficult situation because the previous data you will some sort need to manually input now.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And it helps with other things. So, you know, with us, for example, we've had, for example, AMLA, you know, the sort of global worldwide anti-money laundering act.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things going on around that. And because we're already data driven, we didn't have to do anything extra to be compliant with those types of things. So it's very powerful. So technology from the ground up to really build your business so that it grows with the business and doesn't become an afterthought.
Okay, great. Is there any last piece of advice before we end our podcast?
Just the one thing that we always say here at Juwai IQI is dream big, do the effort, and enjoy life.
All right, thank you so much. Today we have Nabeel, and I hope you enjoy our podcast. See you next time.
Thank you.